So this is my review of Introduction to Sally by Elizabeth von Arnim, an author born in 1866 in Australia, who happens to have been the cousin of Catherine Mansfield. Both writers, great writers I admire. Now, I discovered Elizabeth von Arnim about 10 years ago when, by accident, I stumbled upon the novel The Enchanted April, which was one of the most enjoyable novels I've ever read. And so I discovered this author who is, as far as I know, not very well known. And I'm really, really glad that the British Library Publications has decided to publish her work, because I think she's one of the most underrated authors that, I don't know, in the Western world is probably one of the most underrated, at least among the authors I'm familiar with. So, having said this, let's see. I spoke in a separate video about my reaction to the preface to this book by the British Library Publications. So I'm just going to allude to that. Briefly, the story. This is the story of Sally, or Salvatia, because that is her given name. Sally is her pet name. Obviously, Salvatia makes us think to salvation, and that is in connection to her. Sally is both an extraordinary character, and on the one hand, she's extraordinary. On the other hand, she's very typical for a woman of her generation and time. She's extraordinary in the sense that she is described by Elizabeth von Arnim as the most extraordinarily beautiful woman anybody has ever seen. And I saw that the person who wrote the postface and other people who made comments about the book had the kind of typically sort of feminist commentary in relation to that description that, oh, she's judged in the typical way by misogynist society, etc., etc. But I didn't read it in this way, because Elizabeth von Arnim doesn't even give us a specific description of her beauty, which she would have done because she's a very good writer. So she just tells us that whenever somebody sees her, they are completely they are paralyzed by her beauty. People start to gather around her. All the men are at her feet, and even the women are seduced by her. So she's not just beautiful; she is beautiful in a way that is completely out of the ordinary. And she's not only beautiful, but she also possesses a kind of innocence that, again, is not a normal type of innocence. This is not, and by the way, she's very young. She's under 20, so obviously she's a virgin. But it's not that kind of innocence. She has the kind of innocence that, for example, Dostoevsky's Idiot has. She has that kind of, she's good to the point of appearing simple-minded, exactly like Prince Myshkin in Dostoevsky. So you can see here that the author is setting a character that has two attributes, this extraordinary beauty and this extraordinary goodness and innocence. She sets a sort of an equivalency, like the kind of equivalency that we've known from the antiquity, in which goodness, beauty, and truth were the same thing. Or in fairy tales. I mean, in fairy tales, the heroes or the heroine is assumed to be at the same time beautiful and good. I mean, her outwardness was an expression of her inwardness. So they meant the same thing. So it's that kind of beauty and that kind of innocence. So again, I don't take them in a realist way. And this character, she is from a low-class family. And this has consequences. Her parents are shopkeepers. Her mother is dead, and she lives with her father. And because she's from low class, she speaks very bad English. And that's going to be an important topic in the novel. And at the beginning of the novel, this young man comes in the shop, and of course he sees her and he falls immediately in love with her, and she marries him even though she doesn't really love him, but she doesn't really care much. She wants to get married someday, so why not him? And this man is a student. He's very educated. He's from a social point of view, he is a notch above her socially, so he's slightly he's a little better off, and obviously very educated, and he lives with his mother, who's also very educated. So he takes his new bride to his mother's place, and there they both proceed to educate her, because of course, for an intellectual, the most important thing is education. And these people who are the most educated in the novel, they in the end they are the most intolerant, because they really want to change her. And in fact, that's one of the most important topics in the novel. Everybody who sees Sally, or almost everybody, kind of wants to change her. At the beginning, they are fascinated with her. They all want to be around her, but then they all want to change her. So first of all, the husband wants to change the way she speaks, because she speaks. Now, obviously, I don't have a British accent, so I couldn't imitate it. But from the description, I understand that she probably speaks like the character in My Fair Lady, and in fact, it's pretty clear that the author had that as a reference. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that reference already existed, because Sally's husband is forcing her to repeat sentences and words that start with H, because she often, or actually all the time, she drops the H. She never says the words starting with an H, just like the character in My Fair Lady. She couldn't say the H. So there's obviously a reference there to Pygmalion. So both the mother and the son are attempting to educate Sally. She resists. She is totally uneducatable. And that's it's both funny, but also that's in a way the unusual structure of the novel, because the novel ends up being the journey of this heroine, Sally, who eventually runs away. She can't take the mother-in-law anymore, and she runs away. And so we have this journey. The journey gives the author the opportunity to present us Sally's encounter with Britain's social classes, because this, in the end, is a study in social class and in psychological interaction between people of various social classes. It's an extraordinary study, very subtle. So the book is a journey, Sally's journey. And normally in any book I've read so far in which we are dealing with the journey of a hero or of a heroine, what happens? The hero is transformed. That's the whole point of a journey. Well, in this book, extraordinarily, the heroine is the same at the beginning and at the end of the novel. She doesn't change a bit. She speaks exactly the same bad English, and her worldview hasn't changed. I mean, she's very simple. All she wants is to have a house with 2 rooms, a husband, which she has, even though she doesn't care a lot about him, to have a couple of babies. That's she wants that, and to work very hard for the husband and for the babies, because that's all she's done her entire life, and she doesn't know to do anything else. And that will make her very, very happy, or maybe not very, very happy, but happy enough. So, and that's what she wants at the beginning. That's what she wants at the end. And all these people around her, starting with her husband, her mother-in-law, and then other people she meets along the way who attempt to change her, they don't manage to change her. She remains the same. On the other hand, they change. The people around her who had attempted to change her, they are those who change. They are changed by her. And that's quite it's interesting as a structure. And to me, it's an anti-Pygmalion novel. So that's one thing that I noticed. The other thing, another literary reference that I did notice, and that's, I think, more subtle. This woman, who again, she's very simple-minded, not educated. She doesn't say much, but one thing she keeps saying is she says this refrain with a shy voice. She says, "I don't mind if I do," because all she wants is to make everybody happy. And so whenever somebody asks her something, she just says, I don't mind if I do. Which, what does that really mean? I mean, basically, it means that she agrees to do whatever she is being asked to do. But she says it in this kind of idiomatic expression. And that really made me think. It made me think of Bartleby's words, I would rather not. But because there is a similarity there. I mean, both are an affirmation and a negation. Bartleby says, I would rather, so he appears to affirm, but in the end he negates. He basically expresses a negation. He doesn't really want to do anything. So in the end, he refuses to even eat and to live. He's the absolute negation. And Sally, or Salvatia, she's the absolute affirmation. The expression, I don't mind if I do, which appears to be a negation, it's actually, she uses it to affirm. She wants to acquiesce everything that everybody asks of her because she wants to make everybody happy. So she is the anti-Bartleby, I think. She's the anti-Pygmalion and the anti-Bartleby. And because Elizabeth von Arnim is a very witty author, I can only compare her wit to that of George Eliot, but, well, she's not quite as witty, but she comes close. I don't think this is by accident. I really think she had somewhere in her mind Bartleby, and I think she definitely had Pygmalion in her mind. So this is the journey of Sally, and now insofar as her interaction with the others are concerned, as I said, she's from a low class. Interestingly enough, the people who are depicted as the most biased about others are the people from the lowest classes. For example, there is a scene with the ticket conductor who is approached by her father when she disappears, when she runs away. And the ticket conductor doesn't want to give him any information because he despises somebody so low class as her father. On the other hand, when an aristocrat approaches the ticket conductor, he's much more, open. So, and this is just one scene. And then the aristocrats, because she does meet, in the end she's going to meet, of course, aristocrats, and she enters in she is sort of adopted for a couple of days by a family of dukes, and they become enamored with her. And here, the aristocrats happen to be the most open-minded, and unlike her husband and her mother-in-law and other people who are lower classes and who want to change her and who are ashamed of the way she speaks, the aristocrats have no problem with that. Initially it appears that it's because they are very open-minded, but then you realize that it's not quite like that. That some of them simply regard her as amusing and an amusing spectacle. Others, others have some kind of a cultural misunderstanding. They interpret how she behaves as a sort of a rebellion against the customs, and they think that she's free-spirited when in fact she's just very simple. So there is this layer of cultural misunderstandings between the different social classes that interact, which makes the novel entertaining and amusing. But it also gives the author the opportunity to make some very subtle psychological interpretations. So those. And speaking of the encounter with the aristocrats, there are some funny scenes in which Charles, the aristocrat who falls in love with her, takes her to some museums. Of course, she, being uneducated, is not interested at all because art doesn't tell her anything, and he looks at her in things. So she's kind of like a dog. She is so uninterested that she's almost like a dog. And at the same time, she looks at him and she thinks that the aristocrats make her think of monkeys because they behave really in this real weird way. So that's her encounter with the aristocrats. She feels at her ease only when she is among servants and people who are of the lowest social class, because she can speak freely and nobody corrects her English. And so what else? So as I said, it's a journey through Britain's social classes in the 1920s. It is really, really well done, very entertaining, but also very, very subtle in terms of in terms of the description of the world of the time. And eventually, everything ends well. It's a sort of a comedy, a serious comedy, and it ends with as I said, the heroine not changing a bit, and with everybody around her changing. So I highly recommend this, and also I would encourage the British Library Publishing to not to apologize for the authors that they publish, and especially not for this author. This is an author that more than deserves to be published, and if the British Library Publishing really wants to, to explain something in a preface to the readers, I don't know, maybe they could explain that literature should not be read as ideology, that literature is written according with certain codes, that it's not simply that people had different opinions 100 years ago, which of course they did, and which of course they did. But the very point of reading literature is for us, the reader, to forget about who we are, because I'm tired of who I am in daily life. I don't want to encounter myself also when I read literature. The whole point of reading books of fiction, and especially books of fiction written 100 years ago, is for me and for us in general to immerse ourselves in a completely different world and to become the other, to forget about our values, to forget about who we are, and to transform ourselves. That's the whole point. And in this way, literature is entirely liberating. That's, if there is a morality in literature, that's the only morality, that it frees you from who you are. So thank you very much again for publishing this.